Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful lunch. I enjoyed a lovely cheese sandwich. Welcome back to SNS 2020 Day 2. Had a fantastic morning so far. Lots of subjects from hydrogen through to skills, offshore wind, and a touch of oil and gas as well. So it's been a stimulating morning, and we've had even greater numbers this afternoon than we actually had yesterday, I'm delighted to say. And I thought yesterday we'd peaked. So really, really pleased with the way the platform's behaved and the audience is built. So thank you very much indeed for all your participation. So we're about to have a look at some projects that are happening off our coast. I'm delighted to say that with a number of the largest offshore wind projects in the world currently planned off our coast, we're delighted to bring two of these developers together today to provide a greater insight into these ventures, how they're progressing, the requirements of the schemes, and the potential for our supply chain to once again rise to the call to provide the resources, the technology, the skills and determination to see our region maintain its preeminent position in the UK's offshore wind sector. Today, joining us from Scottish Power Renewables, we have Ross Ovens. Ross is the project director for their ambitious East Anglia Hub project, with previous experience with projects including Lynn and Inner Dowsing, Racebank, whilst he's with Centrica, Vikinga, East Anglia 3, and now East Anglian Hub. Rob brings a wealth of experience to the role at the Hub. Here to share some of his observations, here is Ross Ovens, ladies and gentlemen. Ross, over to you.
Thank you, Simon, and good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. Just also delighted to see so many people signing up to come and join the session. So that's really gives me a lot of enthusiasm. So thank you very much for that. And also, I've attended some of the other sessions over the course of yesterday and today, and again, clearly it's been really well attended. So I'm really pleased about that. So well done to IGA.
Thank you.
Well done to IGA for organising this event, bringing us all together, and I think it's been working really well. As Simon said, my name is Ross Ovens. I'm the project director for the ambitious East Anglia Hub, as Simon puts it, and it is a very ambitious project. And I'm today going to try and give you a good overview of that project, what it's all about, what we're trying to do with the project, and on what sort of timescales, and then more importantly, how members of the supply chain can get involved. Just before I do that, I mean, I think we've kind of talked a little bit about in some of the different sessions about net zero and decarbonisation, and they're all big challenges that we need to deliver on. But really, the way we're going to deliver on those is with big projects like this one that I'm going to try and talk you through today. Next slide, please. So before I go into the detail of the project, really, I just wanted to try and explain a little bit about how East Anglia Hub fits into the overall portfolio for Scottish Power and Iberdrola. What Scottish Power is a global business. We're part of the Iberdrola group. We have projects all over the world, and really, depending on where you are in the world, you'll know us by a different name. And some examples of that is that in the US we're known as Avangrid. In Brazil we're known as Neoenergia. In mainland Europe, we're Iberdrola, and of course, in the UK, we're Scottish Power. But one thing to point out is that despite these different geographical locations and different brands, we are one offshore business operating under one team, which gives us the ability to share all of those lessons across the projects, and also to sort of leverage the supply chain at a global level. So, in terms of the projects that we have operational, so we've got 972 megawatts operational. That's made up of our share of the recently commissioned East Anglia 1 project. We've also got West of Duddon Sands in the UK, which is a joint venture, and then the Vikinga project. And as Simon mentioned, that was the previous project I was working on before I joined East Anglia 3, and then before I moved into East Anglia Hub. So then we've got 496 megawatts that's currently under construction, and that's our project in France called Saint-Brieuc. And then we have a really impressive pipeline, I would say, of 2.1 gigawatts that has consent, or has all the tariffs secured for those projects. And then beyond that, we have a very significant pipeline of projects. So we have very ambitious targets, and that pipeline is growing every day. Next slide, please. Now, this slide really just shows an overview of the pipeline of projects within Iberdrola and Scottish Power. As you can see with the orange bars, we've got a lot of projects that we expect to be delivering concurrently, so they'll be overlapping, and that really means that we need to have a significant team in place to deliver those projects. But also we need to rely on the supply chain, because you guys are the ones that need to really deliver this. So we will be relying on the supply chain to be there to be able to support us to deliver these projects. And this only looks out to 2028. So these are the projects that we have the tariff secured for. We've got a lot of other projects that will come after 2028. We've recently made announcements about acquisitions in Sweden. We've got opportunities we're exploring in Brazil. So this pipeline will only grow from our perspective. Next slide, please. So then moving on to the East Anglia Hub project, or the ambitious East Anglia Hub project, as Simon calls it. I mean, personally, I'm really excited by the opportunity that a project of this scale brings. It's something completely new for the industry at this size, and we will be delivering up to 3.1 gigawatts, and that's with 263 turbines, or a maximum of 263 turbines, and powering 2.7 million homes. Now, technically, it's a very challenging project as well. We have water depths between 24 and 76 meters. We've got mobile sound waves to deal with, challenging soil conditions. No doubt we'll have to deal with UXOs and boulders as well. And all of this is spread over 3 different project sites and 731 square kilometers. So it's going to be a significant challenge. Next slide, please. So the East Anglia Hub, what is it? Well, it's actually a project that we have made up by combining 3 offshore wind farm sites. All 3 sites are located together in the southern North Sea. We're combining them into one procurement and delivery program. These sites are East Anglia 3, which is the northernmost project. It's fully consented. We've then got East Anglia 1 North and 2. These 2 projects are currently in the planning process. And you can see where these 3 projects sit in relation to the East Anglia 1 project that we've just completed construction and commissioning of, and is now in operation. So I'm just going to go through in the next couple of slides now just a little bit of detail on each of the individual projects. So next slide, please. So starting with East Anglia 1 North. So this is 800 megawatts in capacity. So that's up to 67 turbines. It's 47 kilometers from the port of Lowestoft, and it has water depths between 36 and 59 meters. And this project covers an area of 208 square kilometers. Next slide, please. So then East Anglia 2. So East Anglia 2 is 900 megawatts in capacity. That means 75 turbines. We are 45 kilometers from the port of Lowestoft, and we have water depths ranging from 29 to 76 meters, and we're covering an area of 218 square kilometers. And then next slide, please. And last but not least, we have East Anglia 3. So this is the largest of the 3 projects at 1400 megawatts. That means that we could install up to 121 turbines, and we're the furthest from shore, so it's 78 kilometers from the port of Lowestoft, and with water depths between 36 and 59 meters, and covering an area of 305 square kilometers. Next slide, please. So then looking at the kind of the technology that we plan to deploy at the project, and starting with the turbines. So we're looking to install a total of 263 turbines across the 3 sites. And really we're looking for, the larger class of machine. So that's 12 megawatts or more per machine. And these could have a maximum rotor diameter up to 250 meters and a maximum tip height of 300 meters. And really here we're looking for, the future technology, the next sort of generation of machine, not necessarily what's being deployed now, but the larger next generation of machine, so that we can continue that downward pressure on cost and the price to the consumer. With the turbines, what we'd really like to do is to have an early selection of the turbine supplier, and we very much want to have a collaborative approach with all of our supply chain members. So we're looking to announce the turbine supplier very early in the process so we can work with them to optimize the project and really continue to drive down that cost. Then with the foundations, so with a project of this size, we have the opportunity to try and standardize as much as we possibly can. And the foundations is a good example of this. We'll be looking to deploy monopiles across all 3 sites. So with a similar design, same installation methodology, same installation spread. So there we bring a lot of benefits in the design process, but we also bring ourselves a lot of opportunity in the logistics and the installation with flexibility in that process. So that's one of the key benefits we'll be bringing. Next slide, please. So then, as we are made up of 3 projects or 3 individual sites, we actually then have to still deal with 3 individual grid or off-tow connections. So 1 North and 2 are AC projects. Those projects will both landfall at Sizewell. They've got a fairly short onshore cable route into of around about 9 kilometers, and then we'll be connecting into a new substation at Friston. And then with East Anglia 3, which is a DC project, we'll landfall at Bordsea, and we have a much longer onshore connection of 37 kilometers. But we've actually already pre-installed all of that onshore infrastructure. So all of the onshore cable ducting, we installed all 37 kilometers of that at the same time as we installed all of the infrastructure for the East Anglia 1 project. So that's a really positive move that we took a number of years ago. And then we'll be connecting into Bramford, where we'll then push the power into National Grid. Next slide, please. So just looking now at the offshore element of the grid connection. So back to 1 North and 2. As I mentioned, these are AC connections. So we'll be using 66 kV array cables to collect the power from the turbines. We'll then collect that up into the offshore substation. That will be then stepped up to 275 kV. That will then be transported onshore through the export cable to the new onshore substation that I mentioned before. Now, these structures will be something like 5,000 tons for the top side and around 2,500 tons for the jacket. And as 1 North and 2 are very, very similar in terms of their size, and we expect that we'll be deploying an offshore substation for both of those projects, and there will essentially be a duplicate of each other, again, as a design optimization from our side. Next slide, please. So East Anglia 3, as I mentioned, is a DC connection. So here, instead of having the offshore substation, we actually have an offshore converter station. But we will be collecting the power through the same 66 kV arrays as we had at 1 North and 2, but we'll be then transforming the power offshore from AC to DC, pushing it through the export cables to an onshore converter station where we then transform it back into AC before it then goes into National Grid. And because of the complexities around this process, it's a much larger offshore infrastructure. So the top side will be around about 9,000 tons, sitting on top of a jacket somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 tons. So we're actually quite well advanced in the design of the DC equipment. That's been a process that's been ongoing since sometime last year. Next slide, please. So time-wise, so this year and next year, really we are focusing on engaging with the supply chain, selecting the strategic suppliers that we need to, that we feel we need to at this stage, continuing with the design work. But we've also been undertaking some geotech campaign and geophys campaign, which I'll talk about on the next slide. So that will be this year and next year. Then through the course of 2022, we expect to start some of the onshore works. 2023, some of the offshore works, and then through 24, 25, and 26, we'll then continue both onshore and offshore works to deliver the project to completion in 2026. Next slide, please. And as mentioned previously, we've been undertaking geophysical and geotechnical scopes. That work is now live offshore. We signed a contract earlier in the year with Fugro, and we've split that campaign into 2 scopes. So this year we've been doing ground modeling work, so to build up a basic ground model, so geophys, geotech basic work. Next year we're then flipping that into a more detailed campaign once we fix the actual layout of the 3 sites, and then we'll do site specific geotech and geophys campaign next year under the same contract. Next slide, please. So in terms of the contracting strategy, I mean, we get questions every now and then about, why are we combining these 3 projects, and how is that going to affect the contracting strategy, and what are we doing this for? And really, it's all about leveraging the scale that a project of this size brings in the marketplace. So high volume of purchasing. It gives us the ability to try and make sure we're working with the best suppliers in the market, securing those strategic partners early in the process, and looking for innovation so that we can continue to optimize the project, drive down those costs for the consumer. Next slide, please. And this slide's probably a little bit busy, but I think probably the key points to note is that we've been quite active in the market in terms of issuing out invitation to tenders. We've had the turbine and the HVDC converter station tenders have been running for around about 12 months now. We're very close to making a final selection and an award with those 2 contracts. We have in the market at the moment the transport and installation tender, as well as the foundation supply tender. They're in the market and both due back at the beginning of October. Then the DC export cable, that the tender has been received for that recently and is under review. The AC export cable, that's due to be, the ITT is due to be issued in October. And then on the AC substation side, that's broken down into a number of smaller scopes, and they're due to be released through Q4 of this year. So quite a lot of activity with all of the key packages over the last year, and that will continue into next year. Next slide, please. And I guess with all of this activity and with all of this tendering ongoing, the questions from the supply chains, probably quite rightly so, going to be how can they get involved? And initially, I would say through events like this are excellent. We've got meet the buyer sessions that we've been running. We've got other colleagues of mine available to have meetings with. We've been presenting at some of the excuse me, at some of the other eager webinars and some of the other industry webinars, and there's a link there on the screen as well where you can click that and you can try and apply to be part of our supplier database. And that's it. I think I've almost run out of time. So from me, that's everything I wanted to cover. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to answering some of your questions.
Thanks so much, Russ. That's fantastic. A few questions I've got from the audience here for you. One is, what's happening after the East Anglian Hub? Are you going floating elsewhere in the UK, continuing in the Southern North Sea, or moving out of the UK altogether?
Well, so there's a few questions there. So, I mean, as the supply chain demonstrated, we are a global business, and we have projects all over the place in the US, in Brazil, across mainland Europe. We've been looking for opportunities where we can find them. So for now, East Anglia Hub is the last project that we have in the UK, but hopefully there'll be opportunities coming up. So that's what I'll say there. In terms of floating, so we've set up a specific team within Iberdrola with a sole focus on floating. We hope to launch a demonstrator in the near future as well, and we're in discussions with turbine suppliers about how we can bring them into that process as well. So
great stuff. Next one is, what are the areas where you're looking for the supply chain to step up? Are there any areas that you're having particular difficulties with?
Well, I mean, I guess really for us, UK content is a big focus for us, and UK manufacturing on the monopile side would be a really interesting proposition for us, given where our location is of the project. So if the supply chain had an opportunity for supplying of monopiles from the UK, that would be really interesting for us, for sure.
There aren't that many yards left in the
No.
UK that are capable of doing that, and
No.
in this region, it would certainly be a push to produce in volume, in the kinds of volumes that you're talking of. I guess alternatives could be for third-party other countries to manufacture elsewhere, then bring in here for finishing. Is that something you're considering or looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, keeping the foundations as an example there, you could look at final fit out of transition pieces, final fit out of electrical equipment into the TPs, that kind of thing. So we've been looking for opportunities, and I think we've demonstrated that quite well through East Anglia 1, where we've used local UK ports for final fit out and for final marshalling locations. So we'll look to use the local infrastructure as much as we can to its best potential.
This one again is possibly slightly outside of your overall remit, but saying I believe you disposed of some of the equity in East Anglia 1. Will the same be true of the hub?
I mean, for now, that's not really a discussion we've been having, but you can see that generally with all of the developers, there's normally a model of delivering a project and then releasing some of that equity and then recycling that into another project in order to keep that cash moving. But for now, that's not really a discussion that's ongoing.
And one of the other things was just in terms of skills. Are we lacking in skills in our region for the projects of this nature, or are you finding that the region's capable of stepping up to the plate with the skilled people that you're looking for?
I mean, I've been very pleasantly surprised, and I think there's been a lot of work that's been beneficial through the East Anglia 1 project. And I have to kind of think back to 2004, 2005, when I was in the area delivering projects like Lynn and Inner Dowsing, and things have improved significantly since then. So I think the region's really stepped up in many ways, and skills is one of them.
Excellent, Ross. Yeah, and the other thing, one other thing, I don't know whether you're able to stay with us for Rob's presentation as well, just in case.
Absolutely.
After Rob's presentation, there may be some questions that we have for the pair of you together, if that's possible. So we'll have Rob's presentation, then I'll have some questions for Rob from the audience, and then we'll see whether there's any other questions from the assembled audience for both of you, if that's okay. But in the meantime, Ross, could I really, really thank you, really appreciate you coming along and sharing more information about this ambitious project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And now, if I may, what I'll do is pass over at this stage and just say that, if we can now pass over to Rob, and Rob is here to tell us more about the two of the main projects that are going on from Vattenfall. I'd like to introduce Rob Anderson of Vattenfall. Rob is the project director for both Norfolk Vanguard and Norfolk Boreas offshore wind farms. Rob has a wide range of experience in the UK and Canada in both infrastructures in both countries, and is joining us today to provide more details about Vattenfall's projects here in East Anglia. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you very much. And can you see me?
Certainly can.
Great. Good afternoon. So it's a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Unfortunately, not in person, but I've chosen a background, if you can see me, of a beach in Norfolk, so about as close as I can get to the southern North Sea. So yeah, my name is Rob Anderson, and I'm the project director for the combined Norfolk Vanguard and Boreas projects. So each a 1.8 gigawatt offshore wind project off the coast of Norfolk. So it's a pleasure to introduce myself and present where we are with the projects today. Next slide, please. So these projects are being developed by Vattenfall, a Swedish energy company with a significant offshore wind capacity in operation, construction, and development across Europe. So when I got the offer to join Vattenfall as a project director for the Norfolk projects in January this year, and so I jumped at the opportunity. The chance to manage what would be the world's largest offshore wind farm doesn't come around every day, and is an exciting time to be involved in offshore wind. The industry is booming internationally, projects are getting larger, and there's a strong recognition that offshore wind as the key technology for addressing climate change globally. So Vattenfall seemed like the place to be. It had a real commitment to transforming the energy mix to be fossil-free, a proven track record of successful development, and a large and dedicated team focusing on offshore wind. So next slide, please. In the UK, already the world's largest offshore wind market, there's strong industry and government support for additional capacity. With a net zero commitment underpinned by the UK's offshore wind sector deal, setting a target of 40 gigawatts by 2030, and allocating budget and committing to future CFD auction rounds to build capacity out further. East Anglia, already home to a significant amount of offshore wind, is set to be at the forefront, with 8.5 gigawatts of projects in development. Of this, the Norfolk Vanguard and Boreas projects represent over 40%, so a significant investment, and the cornerstone for securing the region is the UK's main offshore wind hub, bringing investment opportunity, long-term sustainable jobs to the region. So I accepted the role of project director in January, full of excitement, but I wasn't blind to the challenges. We'd already seen record low CFD strike prices in the UK, zero subsidy projects in Europe, high demand on the supply chains, aggressive competition, all this leading to margins getting increasingly tighter. So in Brexit uncertainty and international competition put specific pressure on UK projects in development, particularly with the additional complexity of planning process here in the UK. In fact, just before I joined and accepted the role, Vanguard was hit with its first delay to its consent decision. So after a bit of gardening leave, I joined the company and the projects in mid-March. My first day was in Norwich, as some of the team was preparing for the Boreas planning examinations that week. The next day, lockdown was announced, meetings were canceled, and I was faced with the daunting prospect of managing the development of the world's largest offshore wind farm with a team I hadn't met during an economic crisis, plunging electricity demand, a global pandemic, and all being locked down in a small flat in Brighton. So the challenge for me had suddenly got a lot harder. So next slide, please. Today, I'd like to provide an overview of the Norfolk projects, talk about the challenges, how we're seeking to overcome them, and outline where we are in the development timescales as we prepare for next year's CFD auction. The Norfolk projects consist of two wind farms, Vanguard and Boreas, each 1.8 gigawatts. They have secured seabed rights from the Crown Estate and grid connections from National Grid. Well, each had separate planning processes. They were very much developed together to take advantage of the economies of scale, synergies in construction and operation, and to minimize the social and environmental impact, particularly through a coordinated grid connection. In July, after a couple of delays, Vanguard received planning consent from the Secretary of State, culminating several years of effort from the team. Of course, I took full credit as the project director, having been there a total of 3 months. It was a great moment for the team, and I realized I'd made the right choice, seeing the team's enthusiasm and excitement during our virtual celebration of this important milestone. Boreas, Vanguard's sister project, like other offshore wind projects currently in planning, was delayed further because of COVID impacts. The planning examination is due to close within the next month, and we're hopeful for a timely decision by early 2021, so the project can prepare for the next CFD allocation round. So next slide, please. The onshore works to connect the project are a massive and complex part of the project. We've got 60 kilometers from the landing point at Haysborough across Norfolk to Nexton. So from the onset, we sought to coordinate the cable installation works between the projects, and we made the decision early to go for HVDC technology, which is a new offshore wind technology in the UK, but allowed us to reduce the social and environmental impact by minimizing the number of cables. So we're currently busy with over 100 landowners as we have survey teams out undertaking preparatory and environmental surveys to gain information on the sites, inform engineering, and to discharge all our environmental conditions. So next slide, please. In terms of timeline, so we're pleased to have Vanguard's consent. That gives us a lot of certainty and comfort, but still a lot of work to do on Boreas. We're extremely busy on several fronts preparing for next year's CFD allocation round. We've got multiple survey teams working onshore, and we've deployed a fleet of vessels that are offshore geophysical and geotechnical works. So despite restrictions on movement and people, new health and safety regulations due to COVID, increased quarantine risks, all these works are going very well with minimal delays. So we're active on our engineering, optimizing the design, and we've launched several tender packages. So I'll discuss our supply chain a little bit later, our supply chain engagement. All this preparatory work is being done to place the projects in the best position for next year's CFD auction, which will depend on to provide the long-term stable contract we'll need to make our investment decision, particularly in the current environmental climate. It will be a highly competitive auction, but we're confident the Norfolk projects will be successful. This should lead to a start of onshore works in 2022 and first power offshore by around 2026. Next slide, please. So one of our main activities engaging with the supply chain. Is through this collaboration, we'll get the understanding, innovation, solutions, and development needed to take on the projects the size of Norfolk. So we're committed to engaging with local suppliers to support us. We seek to maximizing the UK content in line with the government's targets. Our engagement has started early through supplier workshops and presentations in the region, but significantly ramping up as we're preparing formal tenders for major tier 1 packages. So next slide, please. Thanks. So we're currently up to market for HVDC systems, onshore, offshore, and inter-array cables, turbines, ports, and onshore works. So our aim is to ensure we have the best understanding of the market conditions, solutions, and deliverability to make sure we prepare our bid and to construct and operate the projects. So our approach is to partner and collaborate with the supply chain as we see more chance in successfully delivering by working together. As one of the challenges, we carry a lot of uncertainty leading up to the CFD bid and are dependent on its results, but at which point it'll be full steam ahead for the project with a very aggressive delivery schedule. So this requires early preparation now to ensure we can meet the timescales that we committed to and that we're busy with a very large team to make sure we're ready and well prepared. So the next slide, please. So one of the packages of work we're currently preparing is the onshore works. So despite this being a relatively small part of the overall projects, we're putting a lot of attention into it. I've already highlighted the challenge of running cables 60 kilometers across Norfolk, which we aim to do efficiently and with minimal disruption. So it's here that we see some real opportunities to really engage with local suppliers and contractors who know the area and can help us optimize this complex part of the work. So we've encouraged bidders to engage with local contractors and put that into our tender evaluation process. We've also planned a long optimization period. So working with the contractors to get innovative solutions that can deliver on time, safely, and with minimal disruption to local communities. So this tender package should be out later this month. So next slide, please. So another package we're busy on is long-term operation and maintenance setup for the projects. So we're assessing the best options for servicing the wind farms and to make sure our technicians can access the site efficiently and safely. So we're looking at all options for harbors and facilities and see some really positive sign that the region is recognizing the opportunities for servicing both our projects and others in the area as part of a regional hub. So Vattenfall will be in the area for the next 30 years. So we want to ensure we have a good home to work from and we have a sustainable relationship with our neighbors. To the next slide, please. So I just wanted to highlight here that we believe the skills gap is real. This graph shows how quickly we're going to have to ramp up after the CFD auction award. So the size of the Norfolk's projects is immense, and this is only one of several projects vying for the skilled people required to meet the commitments in the UK offshore wind sector deal. As Vattenfall, we're doing our part in communicating our plans and encouraging skills development and preparation, but many of the skills required will need to be developed by the supply chain and locally. So there's tremendous opportunities in the East Anglia cluster, but as the projects grow in size, we all need to be more certain in planning and CFD timeline to ensure that we can scale up in time to take on the challenge. So next slide, please. So I'd like to close out just a few key messages. So the Norfolk projects are huge undertakings, and I want to reaffirm Vattenfall's commitment to the project and be a major long-term player in the East Anglia cluster. So I've highlighted some of the challenges we've had, but I'm encouraged by the culture within Vattenfall to enable the transition to fossil-free living. And I'm motivated every day by my team who want to make the Norfolk projects a success. So these times have been challenging for all of us, needing to change working practices with a diverse team spread around Europe. But this team spirit's been fantastic, and I'm proud of the progress we're making despite the challenges. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and still some uncertainty, but we're committed. So we're undertaking all the work required to prepare the projects as best we can. So we'll continue our supply chain engagement and seek innovative solutions from local suppliers. And hopefully, at this point next year, I'll be back in person to celebrate a CFD award and talking about the new challenge of getting on with construction. So thanks very much.
Rob, thank you so much. And for a man that doesn't have a particularly strong Norfolk accent, I've got to say congratulations on saying Haysborough and not Happisburgh, because the number of people I come across on a daily basis that say Happisburgh is unbelievable. So well done.
Well, there was a good training within the company on that just the other week, so that was great.
A few questions for you. What strike price do you anticipate for the auction? Let's have that first. What strike price do you anticipate for the auction? Any ideas?
Yeah, I'm not sure we can sort of share that, but I mean, there's no doubt this is going to be a highly competitive auction. We just look at the size of the projects that are competing this time around. You know, obviously, a bit of a benchmark was set for the allocation round 3, and I think it'll be extremely competitive. But yeah, I'm not going to go on a limb and give you a number right now.
Oh well, we tried. Do you know, you touched on this, but you didn't expand on it any further. I think you probably can't tell us yet, but do you know where your construction and OM ports are likely to be yet?
No, we don't. So we're out to tender right now. So we're evaluating options for the ports, and we expect those sort of responses over the next month or so, and we'll make a selection from there. But
and when Ross rejoins us later, I'll have some other questions on ports. Are there any areas where you're having specific difficulties in finding suppliers at the moment?
No, but as I said, the issue isn't now. You know, we're at the tendering process. The issue will be once, and you know, I hope East Anglia Hub's also successful. But that's a tremendous amount of skills that are required, and it was quite informative to see the overlapping timelines of our two projects, exactly the same time, the same skills demand, and you know that's where I think the pinch will be.
Very good. And because of your experience elsewhere, there's a question here. Have you noticed many differences between the UK and Canada's supply chain? And do you have any observations on that?
I have to fully disclose I haven't spent much time in Canada, actually,
right.
But most of my offshore, most of my project development work's been either in the Middle East or in offshore wind projects, both in Taiwan and the rest of Europe. I think the UK is unique in that it puts a lot of the burden of the planning and consenting onto the developer ahead of the auction. And I think, you know, other countries have a model where either that's been taken on by the government, and so you're getting a sort of everybody's competing for one site rather than sort of competing for several projects. And I think that's you know, both a good thing and a bad thing. Certainly, we're allowed to make our own decisions in the development phase to come up with the best technical solution, but it does mean that, you know, we are expending a lot of money and significant time and resources on the planning process over several years. And we still carry that uncertainty of the route to market, essentially, is the CFD. And so I think, you know, different systems everywhere, but the UK is particularly challenging from the consenting process.
Another question just come in. Aside from the existing projects, are Vattenfall investigating the potential use of floating offshore wind?
Yeah, and I think, you know, that we're, you know, like Iberdrola, we're sort of we're looking at all opportunities all over the place. You know, emerging markets and established markets, and we definitely see the potential for floating wind. And I think there was an announcement by our head of offshore wind last week, or some commentary that you know, we are interested in partnering and taking that forward. But yeah, I've got the luxury of just having to focus on one little project and not worry about that stuff yet. Yeah.
Not so little a project, but yeah, one project, but quite a large one. If I may, Rob, can I thank you for your input, but ask you to stay there. And Ross, are you able to rejoin us? Hi, Ross. So a couple of questions for both of you. And Ross, if you want to go first, Have you found or have you found any lacking from the supply chain in the east of England so far?
I mean, not so far, but then at the same time, as Rob was saying earlier in his point there, it's not about where we are at the moment; it's where we're going to end up, and we're early in a lot of our tender processes at the moment, and so time will tell. We've put those tenders out, and let's see how the market responds. So we don't really have the answer to that one, I'd say, right now.
Rob, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's the challenge. I mean, I hopefully we're all moving forward with our projects on the same time scale, but these projects, collectively, that's pretty much the whole of the UK's capacity in offshore wind already. And so just to put it in that context, every other project that's been built to date, we have to do between us.
I hope you're both familiar with the proposed concept for an ops and maintenance hub proposed for Great Yarmouth Port. I'm just wondering, do you support that? What do you think of it? Ross first.
Actually, I'm not familiar with the proposal at all. Actually, I saw something a couple of weeks ago, I think, in the news about some funding that was going to Yarmouth for the base. Is that what you're referring to?
Indeed, yes. They're looking at putting an O&M base in, easy in, easy out units and facilities as an O&M hub.
I mean, I think anything that can be set up that's going to make our lives easier from an O&M perspective is always going to be very welcome, for sure. I mean, it's one of the big challenges, isn't it, to make sure that we've got our logistics correct. Logistics is where you win and lose a lot of the value in the project. So if there are things that are being done on behalf of the industry in order to establish something in the area, then we're definitely going to be behind that.
Rob, I don't know whether you'd come across it or have been involved in it at all.
I'd seen that announcement, and I referred to it in my presentation. I think this is one of the positive things that we're seeing, is that people are actually starting to realize what's coming, and get ahead of the opportunity and start to make sort of investment decisions right now. And I think we're fully behind that initiative, because we do see that being a particularly challenging area.
Whilst you're still on screen then, Rob, what else would you like the region to do or to provide to encourage further developers and further projects into the region?
So is that to me?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think there's a tremendous amount to do, and I think once we're established in this region, really, and we've got the harbors and the facilities and the skills base, that we need to sort of take advantage of that and then move into the next round of projects. So I think it's going to be fantastic that our projects are really setting the groundwork for further projects to come. And I think off the back of that, there's going to be some fantastic opportunities for skills base. Sue was speaking earlier today regarding the work that we're doing with colleges and universities, and getting that into enough development early enough to sort of really allow East Anglia to respond to what's coming. It's an exciting time.
So Ross, anything that you'd like to see provided in the region that might assist us in winning additional business to East Anglia?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd probably just say, I guess one of the important things is that we all keep talking. So, I think we need to keep a really good level of engagement with the supply chain, so that we're all clear on what we require and what's reasonable, so that certain things aren't put in place that maybe aren't going to be what we need, and it could be a waste. So I think it's important that we keep working really closely together. Initiatives like the O&M base you were just mentioning before sound brilliant. Anything we can do to improve the facilities of the ports, extend opportunities for laydown areas, so that we can extend our, we can build on what we did for East Anglia 1 by using Yarmouth there as a intermediate port for the turbine components. I mean, with these projects, I mean, we will need to double, triple that type of area, especially if both me and Rob are trying to go there at the same time. So we'll be competing.
Yeah.
So I would say really usable land and port facilities and services are going to become really, really critical.
I think the difficulties that we have is I suppose understandably the ports by and large are saying that, you know, if you give us a contract, a signed contract, then we'll give you the land and we'll develop the land for you. But until we get that, you know, we've got shareholders that we're accountable to. We can't invest ahead of the demand, so we can't do that. And you'll probably say, well, unless you've got the facilities and have the land available to me now, it's not going to be relevant to me, and I'll have to look elsewhere. How do we solve that chicken and egg dilemma?
Yeah, chicken and egg was definitely what was in my mind. I was going to say exactly the same. And of course, I mean, we want to be able to be in a position to give those contracts locally, but also whereas the supply chain is not willing to take the risk, or not able to take the risk, I should probably say, we're in also the same position. We need to get ourselves to a position where we've successfully gone through the auction in order to give ourselves the certainty. Otherwise, we would have some difficult questions to answer to our shareholders. So it is a balance. But I guess what we've done is within our program, we've made sure that we have enough allowance in terms of time. Hopefully, that once we've gone through that CFD process, we can then develop those services locally, and we can contract some of those services locally, and there's enough time for those to be implemented.
Rob, anything to add to that?
No, I think that it's the chicken and egg dilemma that we all have, really. And I think, again, I alluded to it, that all we can do is be very open in communication, make sure that our plans are understood, that we are engaging at this stage in preparation, because the starting gun goes off. And unfortunately, there's a bit of uncertainty around when that starting gun goes off. But when it does, we have to be pretty quick and on the ground to sort of bring the capacity on board in quite a rapid fashion. So I think it's all just leading to a lot of prep work ahead of the CFD auction, and making sure that we're open and clear about what milestones are still ahead of us. I said, we've still got Boreas consent. We'd love to have had that in hand by now. We can cope with the delay, but it's been difficult to plan around that. And again, we're still, there's the CFD timing and how the rules are going to play out and everything are still a little bit unclear to us as well. So there's quite a bit of uncertainty. And at the same time, I'd like to count how many vessels we've collectively got out there doing surveys and everything else at the moment. We're spending a lot of money in preparation work at the moment.
So do you think we as a region should be going to government to say, look, we know this demand is going to be coming. You're going to have to approve these developments. So it's going to be coming as well. We need to have the infrastructure ready for them. Can we have some money to invest now, which we know we're going to get back in the fullness of time? Is that what we should be doing with government now, do you think?
I think there's some dialogue there. Definitely that, we need to prepare, we need the certainty, we're ready to go. But particularly in this economic climate, it would be great to have a little bit more certainty than usual. And I think, that dialogue would be supported.
Ross, anything to add to that?
It's difficult to add anything to that. I mean, clearly that's something we would be very supportive of. And anything, like I said earlier, anything that's going to make our lives easier through improved infrastructure in the region will be greatly appreciated.
So, gentlemen, we've got 1 minute left. So any final points from either of you you'd like to get across before we leave?
Nothing for me, just a big thank you, and thanks for allowing me to give an update.
Thank you, Rob. Much appreciated. Ross?
Again, just say thank you very much. It's been a really, really excellent event. Hopefully I'll be able to watch the closing remarks at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So yeah, thank you for everyone who's watched, and thank you to everyone who's participated in the questions.
Well, Ross, you have to stay online because it's your boss that's going to be talking a little later on.
True.
So Rob, not quite so much, but I'm sure, Rob, you'll find it just as entertaining, interesting as well. So really want to thank you both so much for your contribution today. Really important that our supply chain in this region understands that the scale, the volume, and the speed at which some of these developments are going to come, and how they can now start investing and developing themselves to be able to reach out and work with you guys on these projects. So thank you so much for sharing. This is something that we're going to be doing again, I think, towards the end of next month for Offshore Wind Week, and on a number of occasions, I think, leading up to these developments. So Ross, Rob, thank you both so much for that. Really appreciated. In just, what does it, let's have a look what time we're on now. We're next talking about 3 o'clock-ish, myself, and I'll be joined with Jonathan Cole of Scottish Power Renewables to wrap up today's events. So thanks again to Ross and Rob, really insightful.